This episode of the Coarse Grind Podcast has been brought to you by Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, family-owned and operated screen printing and embroidery business located in a historic storefront on Old Berwick Road in the heart of Espy. They've been doing screen printing for over 20 years. They have high-quality product at a low price. Be sure to check them out. Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, 570-784-1212. Now, on to the show.
Hi, this is Chef Rick Moonen. We're listening to Sean Rossler on Coarse Grind. Come and listen in. Get a few tips.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Episode number 165 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. Often imitated, never duplicated. With you as always, host, creator, Sean Rossler. How's everyone doing this evening? I know what you're all thinking. I do. This was the one where we were going to talk to another Bloomsburg local culinary figure and talk about reopening. Well, that fine lad had to go and get married, and he's a little tied up. No pun intended. So a little switch up here tonight. And when I say switch up, listen, the world works in wonderful, mysterious, at times, ways. And not 5 minutes after rescheduling for the 8th time with Andrew, no kidding, I get a message in the show's Facebook Messenger from someone I'm admittedly still having trouble believing reached out to me, but I'll try not to question it too much and let the universe give me a belated birthday gift in this episode. Tonight's guest is, I'm still shaking my head about this, tonight's guest is the creator of the critically acclaimed Food Network series, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. Maybe you've heard of it. That just happens to have won not one, but 2 Emmy Awards. Now, I could stop there, but the overachiever that he is went and authored what can only be called a simply exquisite book centered around the cuisine that we Americans have created through combination, innovation, and integration, and features an incredible array of special guests throughout, such as Chef Daniel Boulud, Ruth Reichel, and Chef Alice Waters, just to name a few. No big deal. My toes hurt. Name dropping. A man well-versed in all things culinary and cultural, he draws direct lines between society and the very plates we dine from. And does not, I repeat, shy away from pointing out the cultural inequities throughout food culture. Spoiler, barbecue is not a predominantly Caucasian cuisine, like programming would have you believe. One last time. I do feel the need to mention that, yes, I'm still shaking my head at my dumb, awesome luck to come into contact with such a figure in the field. And I wonder if taking my mom to church on Mother's Day might have had anything to do with it. Yeah, it's got to. Anyway, I digress. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, creator of the Emmy Award Winning Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and author of Food Americana, the David Page. What is up, sir?
I'm reeling from the wonderfulness of that introduction, and I think we should probably just cut it off.
I think we should wrap it up there. This has been episode number 1.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I cannot express enough. You know, I know we were talking off air, 7 years in this year for me, and the luck still strikes me, and the concept of people just saying yes. It's such a simple thing and so beautiful when it happens. So I cannot thank you enough for being here with you. You being here with me for that matter. Quick refresher for those with terrible short-term memories like myself or people new to the program. We'll talk starters, we'll talk mains, we'll talk afters. Starters, where did the guest in question come from? How did food enter their life? Mains, we'll talk about what it is they're doing, where it is they're going. And finally, afters, a little bit more irreverent, a little bit more off the cuff. But no one has been seriously misfigured, disfigured, or injured in 164 episodes. So without further ado, David Page, talk to me about where and what you grew up eating.
I grew up eating very boring, middle-class, generic staples made by a wonderful mother who was also a great accountant and a lousy cook.
Okay.
It was gray chicken, and on the occasion that we had steak, it came out of the broiler with kind of this brown sludge on top of it. I was an adult before I realized that steak was a wonderful thing.
Oh no!
So no, I and also being Jewish, I grew up with the holiday meals that could kill you. They were quite good. I mean, the Central and Eastern European fat-laden, slow-braised beef can be a wonderful thing, but the festival meals were heavy and grease-laden, and the stuff my mother made had no taste. So, between those two extremes,
find some middle ground, Dave.
Later in life, I would develop an appreciation for good cooking.
Nice.
And, it's funny because that really didn't happen until I was lucky enough to be sent overseas by NBC News when I was in my late 20s or early 30s. And it was then that I started to notice that A, you didn't eat food quickly, B, it was different in every place, and C, most of it was astonishingly good.
Isn't it amazing what happens when you leave your own backyard, Dave?
Well, it's truly bizarre because to take it a step further, when I was based in Europe and worked in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and was usually on the road. And when I left my posting in Europe, I actually ended in Budapest, but when I left my next to last posting in Frankfurt, I realized I had not once turned on an appliance in my kitchen for 4 years. And when I came back to the States is when I said to myself, I have a little more time. Maybe I should see if I can cook anything. So while my appreciation for food was nurtured internationally, I didn't start making any of it myself till I moved back to the States.
Nice. So it's almost like you went and you studied, it's kind of like, I went to school initially to be a teacher, but you really didn't do any teaching until you went out of the university. So now you come home and you take those lessons learned and then you start to run with them.
And then you find out how good you are. I found out very quickly, I'm a really damn good amateur cook.
Love it.
I do not have any of the instincts of a chef. I'm the guy who still has to cut into the steak to tell if it's
you can't do the finger push test?
And I cannot. And I have interviewed so many chefs who, in the middle of the interview, have turned away to do something to the food they have not been watching. And I'll say to them, why'd you do that? And, it was time. Okay, fine. I have boundless admiration for a true chef. I mean, I'm one of those people who believes that in a creative field, if you have it, then you can be taught to be better. But you have to have a certain it.
You gotta have that,
And great chefs have it. I don't. But, I love to cook. Learned to make cacio e pepe, that great Roman pasta, just last week. And tonight we had it for the third time.
I love it. And isn't that such a beautiful thing to, you go somewhere, you enjoy a dish or you enjoy a concept. And then you bring it home and you do it and you do it and you do it and you master it and you're in your own home enjoying that. Like burrata for us was one where never had it before, had it out. Oh, my wife will kill me. I can't remember where, but it got to last summer. We started doing a salad with nasturtium greens, burrata, and a nice olive oil over top. And it was just, it was unctuous. It was simple. But the best things are, but to bring that home and to do it yourself, it's kind of like making your own stuff, do it yourself.
Yeah.
Garden boxes I did this year. I looked at them. I'm like, listen, I wouldn't buy that from a store because it looks like shit, but I feel pretty good about it because I made it.
We're doing, a service, I don't remember the name of it, that sends you vegetables that were too ugly for stores.
Oh God.
You know the one I'm talking about.
Oh, it's going to kill me because we almost subscribed to it.
It's great. It's usually very good produce. 'cause taste and appearance have nothing to do with each other when it comes to produce. And, it's been a delight, and it's relatively inexpensive. But, you go back to cooking in your own home, the dishes that are so great, if you have the guts to try to do them right, are the truly simple masterpieces. I mean, cacio e pepe there's three things.
Right.
Pasta, well, there's salt in the water, but pasta, pepper, and cheese. Mm-hmm. And if you do it right, like so many of the dishes that are the centerpieces, not just of European cuisine, but many American dishes as well.
Yeah.
And it depends on the quality of the ingredients and paying attention to it. And then you were talking, for example, about finishing something with olive oil. Finishing it with a real olive oil.
Exactly.
Not the garbage that has been counterfeited out of canola that is sold left and right.
No, we were up to my hometown of Honesdale. I'm not sure if you've ever been, but you should definitely go check it out. Some great.
Where is it?
So Honesdale is actually, little known fact, birthplace of the American Railroad. It's in Northeast PA, so it's not too far away.
Right.
And there are some amazing places. I'm going to plug some former guests here just because they're awesome, and I really do think you would get just such a good feel. Like, you go there for a weekend, it's awesome. Tons of, like, B&Bs, that kind of stuff. Native on Main Street is amazing. Here and Now Brewing, also amazing. They actually use their spent grain to make their pizza crust. And
that's become
it's amazing.
Very common among craft brewers.
It's amazing. I said to him, I'm like, who thought of this? And they kind of do that Three Stooges look where they all cross their arms and point at each other. Like, they did. By the way, it was Misfits Market is the produce service.
Is it Misfits? I have something like it. I don't think it's Misfits.
Perfectly Imperfect is another one?
I don't know. I unpacked the box. My wife ordered it.
Mm-hmm.
Next time I better read these signs.
Exactly. There you go. I
did a series on craft beer. We did 26 episodes, and the spent grain thing is a very popular concept.
You think about it. Before it was in pizza crust, we were throwing it to the cows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, they probably tasted better for it. With that said, I also like it in my pizza crust. Not gonna lie. This place, by the way, Here and Now too uses lardo. Like, lardo is like as an appetizer. And in Honesdale,
excellent.
like, I can't tell you how, like, small town my town is, but when you go there, and it was actually just featured in Philadelphia Inquirer, I think, about, like, the top 10 places to go during COVID, and, like, people are moving there now because of this. There's this renaissance happening. So anyway, Honesdale, recommend it.
How far are you from Old Forge?
Old Forge, PA? Are you talking about Old Forge Pizza? Are you going to do that to me right now, Dave?
It's in the book.
Damn straight. Yeah, we used to play Old Forge in high school.
How'd you do?
We kicked their ass, of course.
Right, because they were slowed down by all that pizza.
Exactly. They were sagging behind. No, yeah, Old Forge style. And actually, there was a guy, Al Balzano. Balzano's used to be here in Bloom, and they left. Al Balzano was what I understand to be an OG of the Old Forge movement. And we got a tray of red. And
what do you like, red or white?
Red, no question. Red and the onions.
What? The red's great, but when I bit into the white, and I don't know off the top of my head whether it was sage or something similar, but a spice hit me. Yeah. That white pizza is like the ultimate calzone. It's fantastic.
I would agree with that. Now, I don't know when the last time you had it was. Have you ever asked them to do both?
No, I haven't seen. To be honest, I got my first two pizzas were sent to me by one of the pizzeria owners in town who wanted me to taste it. Mm-hmm. And it was so good, both of them, that I've gone to ordering them on Goldbelly, because if I were to call them, the problem, he'd comp me. I can't pay him for a pizza.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to go to Goldbelly and pay $8 million, and you don't get options at Goldbelly.
Or Dave, you could just come over, visit, and we'll take a drive up. No problem.
I'm in. That's fine. That's fine.
Situation solved. So, you come, this is so interesting to hear you delve so deep so fast when the childhood was this, like, polar 0 or 10 with regards to culinary, like, unctuousness or, flavor.
Yeah, but understand something. I got such a deep dive into cuisine. When I moved to Europe, I mean, the crew that I would shoot with in Florence, even though they were based in Rome, were both originally from Florence.
Gotcha.
My introduction to one of the greatest regional cuisines in the world
absolutely
was two guys saying, "Now come with us, we'll show you."
See.
And I had that experience in city after city. The famed Parisian late night haunt, Beaufanger, which is famous for their fruits de mer, the big tower of seafood. That was the NBC Paris Bureau's late night hangout after filing a story. So that was my introduction to Paris. I got a deep dive everywhere I went, guided by people who knew what they were talking about. So
see,
it was an immersion course, and it was wonderful.
See, this is why I know we're going to be friends for a long time. Because literally, my question here on copy was, when was the moment you knew food was? I'm like, oh look, he just walked right into that, so beautifully, so wonderfully.
Well, what's interesting about it is I had never considered moving out of the United States.
Right.
Never considered it.
Right.
I was in the Chicago bureau. I figured as a hungry young guy, my next move, if I was lucky, would be New York, and then I'd spend the rest of my career there.
Gotcha.
Instead, I get a phone call saying, "You have any interest in moving to London?" And I said, "Yeah." And then they said, "Well, you're one of two candidates. We'll get back to you." And that went on forever, but got the gig.
Yeah.
But so I found myself very quickly needing to learn about all these places I was going to. And I realized that food is the gateway to a culture. You learn so much about a place through its food. And obviously, if you're sharing it with people from that place, the experience becomes somewhat magical.
No question.
But with the exception of the first time I went to Vienna, I said to the local drivers and translators we used there, you would feed nightly news at around 11:30 or midnight, depending upon the time change. And I said, when we're done feeding, is any place open? They said, yeah. I said, but I want you to take me to a place you guys eat. Thinking I'd get me a schnitzel or something. And they said, great, we have a place we love. And it turned out to be an American ribs joint.
No. That's so funny, though. I mean...
Well... That's what they like to eat.
It's always the stuff that's not necessarily inherent to what you have at your disposal. Like when we go down to Mexico, love to go to Mexico. We bought a property pre-kids, and we get to go down there now with kids, which is awesome because I'm fluent enough to get by, and it just makes the whole experience easier. But we go, and it's so crazy when I listen to all the other people from like the Midwest and, hey, can I get a Corona? And like, they don't see the eye roll, but I see the eye roll. And I'm like, I know. I'm sorry. Can I just apologize to you directly? I'm sorry. Like,
there's some remarkably good Mexican beer. Where do you go? What part of Mexico?
Puerto Vallarta, specifically New PV, up on the mountain.
Yeah. Do you know the brewery downtown that's owned by an American?
I do. You're gonna quiz me now. Damn it.
No, I haven't been for a couple of years, but I love PV.
Oh, yeah.
To me, Puerto Vallarta, I'm not going to pretend it's pure Mexico. It is clearly a town.
Oh, it's tourism. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But I love it. And the ceviche there is fantastic.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. You go down along the water, and now this is going down into Old PV.
Right.
And there's the statue of Neptune, and right next to it is that beautiful ceviche stand.
I don't think I know it.
It's right. I don't know.
Neptune, I'll be damned.
There's a statue of Neptune, and it's when you get dropped off, and I can only speak from like coming down the mountain. Apologies to Perry Farrell. Down the mountain, you get dropped off in town, and It's right in the mercado. Like, you know, everything's going on. Everything's hustling. You got to walk down to the water, right? And everything's on the beachfront. And
it's right there. Huh.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's two, actually, because now I'm getting my signals crossed. There's one right when you get dropped down in the square. You turn to the right, and normally there's like, it's a place where you might see a band, but for the most part, it's ladies selling bracelets, that kind of thing.
Right.
And there's a statue there. And the one is this awesome open air restaurant where they have a bunch of like caged parrots and macaws.
Gotcha.
I can't think of it. They actually let me take a picture in the kitchen, which was rad.
Wow.
But to your point though, I mean, it's a fishing culture, and the fish is amazing.
Incredible. Did you? You must shop at the Central Market near the cemetery. The big one. I mean, I would just get lost in there, and then we'd make ceviche from that.
It's amazing. The whole place is amazing, and like the whole. The last time we went down, the Red Hat Brigade was in charge, and you know I spend most of my time apologizing. It is what it is. We're past that now.
It's such a shame. No, I love Puerto Vallarta. We have been there frequently and actually have kicked around the idea of getting a place.
God damn it, we've done the same thing. And I'm like, look, I mean, the cost of living's down. I understand there's other elements to compare to, but I'm like, hey, when these kids go off to college, let's go. Like, let's go yesterday, please.
I'm telling you, the air service is great.
Oh, yeah. Aeromexico's amazing.
Plus, you are close enough to Jalisco to your tequila tour every now and then.
So goddamn-lutely. No question. No question.
You know, it's interesting. It was in Jalisco. We were doing a shoot at a family-owned tequila distillery. That's where I first had birria. We were driving past kind of a ramshackle building that had some sign out that said it was a restaurant. It was clearly family-owned, and they did the one thing they would do on a given day. Mm-hmm. And that day they were doing birria. And I made a new best friend. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
What a great dish.
Yeah. And you know, having my boys down there, my boys are now 13, 10, and 8. This would have taken them back.
That's a great age.
It's a great age.
Wonderful.
And walking downtown and getting something as simple as a street taco or getting chicharron out of a fish tank. Like, sorry kids, that's where they put them. They pull them out of the kettle and they put them in a fish tank. And you enjoy the living shit out of them because they're amazing. Hey, Dave. You wrote a book, huh?
Oh, yeah, I did. I have an enjoyment of food, so I wrote a book.
Yeah, so speaking of food and all things, you know, cultural, how Dave got into it involves Florence. How Dave got into writing involves American. So do me a favor. Take me to the place where you went to and you went, you know what? I'm not busy enough. I want to write a book on Americana food. Not American food, Americana food.
Well,
how does that go?
First of all, there's a couple of things. That doesn't happen overnight. I've been a TV producer for more than 40 years. And writing for television is much, much harder than people think. But it is also limiting because you don't just sit down and write a story. It was a dark and stormy night. What you do is you go in a room and you look at all these pictures and sounds. And then, if you're good, you hide your writing innocuously as a vehicle to push people toward each element of picture and sound. And I'm very proud of the ability to do that. It's a very unique skill. But it's different than having the freedom to, I was going to say at a typewriter, to sit down at your computer and just tell a story entirely out of your head. So everyone who's ever been a TV producer, or certainly a long-form TV producer, has kind of wondered, could I pull off a book? Mm-hmm. Then, after I left Diners and did my beer series and worked a little bit with some streaming startups, I was getting kind of bored. And I have always, every few years, I've changed careers. It can all be in television, but I've been an investigative reporter. I've been a showrunner. I've been, it's whatever you are on a given day. I walked through the Berlin Wall the night it opened. So I figured, eventually, what the heck? Let's just sit down and try it. Having never written a book before, I bit off a lot, because what I did was I chose to write a book about roughly a dozen different foods or foodways, each of which, in retrospect, required almost as much research for a chapter as I would have had to do for a book. Mm-hmm. So I basically researched 12 books. I figured I'd devote a year to it. It took 2 years. But I found the process incredibly enjoyable. I'm quite proud of what I came up with. And I got the writing bug. I'm already working on a sequel.
I love it. I love it. And you know, again, to think of TV going to writing, it does make sense. You know, here at the podcast, we've actually been working on getting our book off the ground.
Right.
You know, but ours isn't so much as a writing process, because, you know, when I heard you talking about hiding your writing, you know, for me as just a podcast host, for example, well, I put that writing up front. Questions are written. I do my homework. You know, I put together a nice little intro and outro, and out we go. For you, that, you know, again, to create 30 minutes of viewable content, it's kind of like e-learning that we develop. You know, every 10 minutes of e-learning requires 80 hours of production. And people scoff at that quickly. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Don't you scoff at that. That's the actual number, because here's everything that goes into it when it's done well. Oh, I didn't know. So to think about, you know, what you were involved in and then kind of translating over to this, it seems like a natural transition. So obviously, you know, food became very much a polarizing lightning bolt for you. Why Food Americana? Why the concept? I know the Jewish spaghetti story in the opening. You know, talk to me about that conceptually. What was it about that feel and that feel specifically that spoke to you so deeply?
Well, the Jewish, I guess I better tell the story. Yes. When I was a kid, my grandmother used to make something she called Jewish spaghetti, which was an atrocious dish of overboiled spaghetti thrown into a saute pan, or as she would have called it, a frying pan, with ketchup and onions. And it was god-awful, but for me, it's the perfect metaphor for how we built an American cuisine. Here is a woman who escaped the violent anti-Semitism of pre-World War II Poland to come to the U.S. Now she's trying to assimilate. To do that, she adopts a dish she thinks of as quintessentially American, except it's a version of a dish that was brought here by Italian immigrants.
Right.
Our entire cuisine is a melange of foods from other countries or cultures.
Yeah.
And when I say I include cultures for, among other things, the inclusion of what settlers were taught by Native Americans, who never get credit for anything.
Damn straight. That's my people right there. 5% at least.
Hey, all right. DNA.com.
That's right.
When the explorers and then settlers came over here in New England, mm-hmm. and they saw a lobster, they recoiled. Yeah. I mean, who the hell would eat that? Well, guess what? When you're starving and you weren't a farmer back home, but you're trying to farm here and failing, then when the Native Americans teach you to wrap the lobster in seaweed and place it directly on the coals, you don't starve. And by the way, that particular move exists to this day in the form of the New England clam bake.
Yep.
And I've always been immigrant interested. I am, not to get political, but on a personal level, I'm
sure.
very, very sympathetic to people who want to come to this country, whatever the rules happen to be at a given moment, to not get killed back home.
Mm.
And, you know, one of the topics that I ended up talking about with people who were educating me, especially in the chapter on Mexican-American cooking,
mm-hmm.
I believe it was Gustavo Arellano, a well-known Mexican-American food expert and writer, who said, Anglos always loved Mexican food. They just hated Mexicans.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that. So I guess to some extent, the immigrant nature of our cuisine and the way we built it, really appealed to the Jewish immigrant past that I am quite aware of. That it's important to me that happened.
Yeah.
And again, I had been digging into quintessential American foods and diners, so it wasn't much of a leap from individual restaurants and dishes to the intellectual question: what's American cuisine? You know, how did we make a cuisine? And we've made one. The decision that I made, and I think it's a fair decision within the rules of journalism when you're an author as opposed to a daily reporter, was that I employed my judgment to define the universe I was writing about. I picked the foods that I believe make up a core menu anywhere in the country. That they've now become that common. For example, sushi is an American food anywhere you go. I did not include Thai food because it isn't. It's extremely popular in some places, generally larger cities or places that consider themselves foodie sophisticated, but it's not yet and may never be part of that core menu. Vietnamese food is terrific. It hasn't made it to the core menu yet. A cuisine that has been pushed by its advocates for a number of years and just is not breaking through, despite the existence of some fabulous restaurants, is Bolivian cuisine. I don't see that becoming an everyday favorite.
African cuisines are a recently emergent. Actually, one of the former guests of the show, Eric Ajapong, was on Top Chef a couple seasons back, and he really brought Kenyan and I want to say Ethiopian cuisine to the forefront. And
Ethiopian cuisine's extraordinary.
It's amazing, man. Durawat. Yeah. My middle kid. I didn't even get to breach this with you. My middle boy is actually brand ambassador to Eat to Explore. So, and there's this kids sociology / culinary home service, and he just did Ethiopia, and he did Durawat and Misirwat.
Fabulous.
Absolutely fabulous.
Ethiopia is the single most awe-inspiringly beautiful country I've ever been to.
Really?
People think of it as a desert. It's not. There's a lot of Ethiopia that's desert. There's also mountains and pine forests. It is a blindingly beautiful place with extraordinary food. But, you know, it's interesting. African cuisine, while I believe advocates such as Michael Twitty are doing yeoman's work in bringing attention to the landscape of African cuisines. But there's, for example, in the world of barbecue, there's very little celebrity pitmaster press for African Americans, even as barbecue enjoys a renaissance. Yeah. And yet it was the African American slaves, the enslaved Africans, who really created the form of barbecue, using their sense of African flavors and spices and basting techniques and cooking techniques. Yeah. It's, you know, there are those who will argue with me when I say it's entirely a black cuisine. Okay, it's not entirely black, but it's almost entirely created by enslaved Africans using the flavors of West Africa.
No, exactly. And, you know, the other part that people miss there is that, you know, barbecue uses the rough cuts. It uses,
of course,
the more of the...
Hold on. Understand something. Pardon me. It didn't originally, because originally it was the whole animal, which included the rough cuts.
True. Fair.
After the meatpacking industry developed in Kansas City, and they were able to ship individual cuts, that, for example, is when Texas brisket became the thing in Central Texas.
Yeah.
Because you could buy just briskets.
Mm-hmm.
But to the extent that it used the whole animal, yes. I think there's more rough cuts in the animal than the stuff that's considered succulent.
Absolutely, man. Ears, snout, jowls. Like, jowl bacon is one of the best delicacies I've ever sunk my teeth into.
Well, pig face is extraordinary.
Amazing.
Where the chef, everything you mentioned, the jowls, I mean, that's the fattiest meat there.
Yep.
And we did for some show I was doing, we did a nose to tail restaurant somewhere.
Oh, nice.
Where their specialty of the house was the face of the pig.
Oh, love it.
And it was phenomenal.
Oh.
Just phenomenal.
How could it not be? How could it not be? So, man, so, culture, am I right?
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing, though, to just think that, like, such a thing, going back to barbecue for a second, you know, you have, I'm going to name these chefs, and I'm not targeting them and saying boo. I'm just saying, like, you think of Chef Tim Love. I'm thinking of some of the other big pit masters, and, you know, to your point, you're right. They're big overalled white dudes. And that's
the
tragic.
only guy who's getting his due is Rodney Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And he left his family barbecue joint, moved, which I think was in Hemingway, South Carolina. He moved down to Charleston. He opened his own whole hog barbecue there. He got backing from, I want to get the guy's name right. I think it's Nick Pilakis. I may have misstated it, but he's a restaurateur who backs a lot of concepts. Wow. And he backed Rodney Scott to open in Birmingham, which was a big success. And they're now about to open soon in Atlanta. But he is the only African American pitmaster who's gotten any kind of acclaim recently. And I will say, with no, I'm not casting aspersions on Memphis in May. I had a phenomenal time going there in 2019. It's considered by many the Super Bowl of barbecue. There were very few black faces. Those that were tended to be pitmasters, not restaurant owners, because now you're back at the whole question of, let's be blunt, it's a hell of a lot easier for a white guy to get working capital than a black guy. And I'm painting with a huge broad brush, I know that, but I'm talking about the economic system. Yeah. And it's also, look, John T. Edge of the Southern Foodways Association, who's a huge authority on stuff like this, blames to a great extent the media and the competition shows, the competition circuit, for making stars out of white guys, not black guys. And I can't disagree with them. I think it's a situation in dire need of correction. I think some people are heading in that direction.
Well, yeah, and I'll absolutely tip the hat to my go-to stable, Bravo's Top Chef, Justin Sutherland, Eric Adjepong, Roscoe Hall I just had on from this season. Roscoe's an amazing artistic talent. Eric Adjepong with the African Cuisine. Justin, he's in Minnesota. He's got, I think, 13 or 14 restaurants.
Wow.
You know, they're really, you know, pushing proper representation of the true food scene, because, like, these guys are the ones running the shop. Like, we like to think at some point that is / was us. Let it happen. Let it happen. Justin's actually on, Fast Foodies, new show on, True TV. Him, Kristen Kish, and Jeremy Ford, where they recreate like a fast food item, like a Big Mac or something like that. But no, Justin, great friend of the show. I mean, same thing for Eric and Roscoe. So big shouts, big shouts. Wow, this literally, I could be here all night. This might be a 3-hour episode, kids. Strap in. Not really, because we all have work in the morning. So Food Americana represents this wonderful swath of food that is uniquely ours. And I love that, right? And we've been slowly but surely, you know, I like to think of myself having been the English teacher, I would always tell kids, like, the English language is an amalgamation of the world's languages. In some way, shape, or form, we've at least got a little bit of everything. And I feel like Food Americana is kind of the same thing, and that's been happening for years and years and years. So, to you, sir, I ask, with all this Americana food, what's going to be next? What do you think is going to be the next true, quote, American food? What do you think is on the cusp of getting pushed over that edge to be called, quote, American?
The honest answer is I haven't got a damn clue. What I do know, and I note this approvingly, as if anyone cares, I do see us dipping back into origin cuisines to expand our interest in their regional cuisines. For example, we've been talking about Mexican birria, which is, for those who don't know, a stewed meat dish, either goat or beef, depending upon the location. Birria was originally not part of the food of northern Mexico back in 1848, when the United States drew a new line after the Mexican-American War, and half of Mexico and everyone in it was suddenly America and American. Losing access to some goods from southern Mexico, and suddenly surrounded by a bunch of Anglos who might buy some of this food if you changed it and toned it down. So that was the home cuisine that evolved into Mexican American, which has evolved since then. I see things like mole, for example, mole is the national dish of Mexico, but it's certainly a featured dish in a place like Puebla, which was not a cuisine included in what became a Mexican-American cuisine. And now birria, which somehow made its way to Tijuana, and then a few years ago crossed over to become quite popular in Southern California, and has now traversed the entire country and is probably the hottest, not spicy, but the buzziest Mexican dish going at the moment. And that's from either central Mexico or Tijuana after we integrated the food of the norteños. So it's regional Mexican food that just made an appearance here and has become so popular, I think it's going to be integrated into the Mexican-American menu. And by the way, I just want to make one thing clear. There's this whole snobby foodie thing that says if you're eating the Americanized version or something, it's not authentic. Well, authentic to what?
Exactly.
It is
Thank you.
Mexican-American food. I mean, people love to do this with Chinese food. Well, it's not authentic. No, it's authentic Chinese-American food. It's not what people in China are probably eating.
Right.
Although in China, cuisine evolves as it does in every other place. One of the most popular dishes in China among young people these days is scrambled eggs and tomatoes. If you found that on a Chinese food menu in the United States, you wouldn't think that was, quote, authentic. On the other hand, now that there are enough young Chinese immigrants in the United States, either students or business people, it has become financially viable for there to be a restaurant industry aimed at Chinese immigrants, not those of us who are not Chinese. Hence, it is becoming much, much easier to obtain Chinese food as it is currently served in China. Flushing in Queens in New York, for example, has a huge Chinese population. For the book, I was taken by two Chinese immigrant students to a huge food court. This was pre-pandemic, although I assume they're coming back to life now.
I hope so.
And it was just booth after booth of people making, creating, cooking fresh dishes as you would get them in China. Now, some of that was mildly familiar, hand-pulled noodles or variations of dumplings. Some of it included foods that most Americans would turn their noses up at that were fantastic, like a lot of offal. kidney,
Right.
artery,
Yep.
duck blood.
Yep.
I had a slice of congealed duck blood that if I could have done without knowing the name of it,
Right.
but it tasted terrific. It tasted like a metallic liverwurst. And more of that food is becoming at least accessible to Americans because it is a trend that is popping up in university towns, where universities have large, especially graduate student Chinese populations.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a restaurant in Bloomington, Indiana, I spoke with the owner, that has two menus. There's a Chinese-American menu and a Chinese-Chinese menu. And he says some of the American students are trying the stuff on that other menu. So, I don't think artery and tendon are going to become an essential part of Chinese-American food, but it is there.
It is there. It is there, and it is, like, you can dip your toe in that. You don't have to go swimming, but you can try the water out. Like, and say, like, for most people, American side, it's going to be, hey, you know what I tried? Like, cool story at a party. Like,
right.
That's what it's going to be. But you can say you tried it, and at the same time, too, one of the biggest things I love to impress upon people when you're in another country and you're sampling another country's culture and their cuisine is like your reaction is your respect. So
exactly.
Learn to hold your composure, even if it is the word. Tony did it. Where was he? He wasn't in the Congo. Listen to me, Tony.
Yeah,
Anthony Bourdain. I want to say Tanzania, maybe. And it was like literal 90-degree, fresh killed goat under a tree. Here's a slab of it. Go. And he just sat there and chewed it. Listen, you want to be like somebody when you grow up, be like that. Because that respect to a culture right there is key. Please remember that. Please.
Back, I don't know, maybe around 2008. Remember when the Olympics were in Beijing?
I do. Yep.
Okay. The equestrian games of those Olympics were in Hong Kong, ostensibly because they spread the games out over the entire country, more realistically because there was no one who owned $1 million horse who was going to risk some sort of illness by bringing it into mainland China.
That's fair.
So they had the games in Hong Kong. My daughter at the time was an actively competing equestrian, not at the Olympic level. And we decided, let's go to the equestrian games. So we flew over to Hong Kong, had a wonderful time, and decided one evening to go out for as local a meal as was possible. And I convinced the guy at the hotel that I was serious, and he sent us to a place. And we open the door, we go in, go down a few stairs. There's this massive, cacophonous hall full of tables and activity, and we were clearly the outsiders here.
Sure.
There was no English. We found ourselves 3 seats at a communal table, and the place was it was like a dim sum restaurant in that the waiters and waitresses were continually circulating with bamboo baskets.
Yeah.
And we certainly knew how to do that, so we pointed a lot of stuff, and we had dish after dish after dish. Finally, I pointed at something, and this old Chinese man who was at one table over speaks up in English, and he says, and I quote, "That not for you." So of course I had to have it.
Of course.
And
of
what
course.
it was duck foot, which, as you know, it's like eggplant. It has little taste and carries whatever flavor it's in.
Exactly.
But I just thought that level of respect for me from him after I had invaded someone else's space and culture, that not for you was so sweet.
That's amazing. So nice. Yeah, and it's I don't want to sound like a broken record. I think we all recognize, and again, I harp on Tony, just because, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Sociologically, when we step back and we look at food, there is no tighter binding agent in life than breaking bread with your fellow human being.
Absolutely.
There just isn't. And when you meet them on their terms and say, feed me, I'll tell you a quick story. Listeners, you've heard this before. Tune out, zone out, go smoke. I don't care what you do. We're on our honeymoon, my wife and I, and we get off at Belize, and everybody else from the cruise ship goes into the touristy nonsense. And we look left, and there's this dirt path into this like little town, and we just kind of share an unspoken agreement, and off we go. And we paid this gentleman without a home, I think $10 US, to just show us his town. Show us where you're from. And he takes me to his favorite fruit vendor and like walks up with that 10 and buys us a bag of fruit. Now stop and frame that moment out right there. He's bringing us to that table. He doesn't have a home. He doesn't have money, but what I just gave him, and here's what he's going to do with it. Let that settle in. And so we walk around town. He shows us this school, the library, and all that. And he ends up dropping us off at literally what is this very ramshackle house. And it's like a basement. You had to walk down a set of steps to go into it. And he basically said in so many words, unless this is my aunt or Grammy, I forget which, it's been a while, she'll take care of you. And I walk in, and there's one light bulb hanging from the ceiling, and there's 2 plastic tables with 2 plastic chairs at each. And she hurries up to like bring us over this basket of like this salsa and these chip type things. And she brings us these whole lobsters out of the water that morning. And I asked her, I said, how much do we owe you? And she like, it was something like 15 Belizean, which would have been like literally $4 US. And I gave her a 20 and I gave her a hug, and I'm like, thank you. And I have this picture of me crouching outside in the dirt, black and white picture, lighting a cigarette, and it looked like Tony Bourdain for just a second. And I'm like, I just did it. That's how I connected the dots.
And you did the right thing.
But she let us into her home. And, so like, from your experiences, from mine, it's that level setting experience we all need to eat. So why not do it together? It's that simple. Right. It's that simple. So like Origin Cuisines becoming regional, that's obviously your next big thing. Do me a favor. Get a little negative for me, because you're a super positive, happy guy. I love it. But I want to see you go south. I want to see you go dark. What Americana food do you want to see die a fiery napalm death?
It's not a food. It's a way of life. I want to kill the chain restaurant.
I love it. I endorse that.
Whatever town you go into, there's a strip of restaurants whose marketing, I mean, I guess I'm beating up on Applebee's specifically, but
thank you for doing that.
You've got this thing claiming to be your local restaurant, but in the course of establishing itself so it could make that bogus claim, it ran some real local restaurants out of business.
Yeah.
And what bothers me the most, I mean, they have a right to exist, but what bothers me the most is that it is the first choice of so many of us. I mean, I'll tell you a story. My daughter is about to finish her MFA at Columbia University. I'm very proud of her.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. A few years ago, then, she was graduating undergrad from Columbia because Dad shouldn't have any leftover money. And it's graduation day, and it's relatively early in the morning, and there's 8 million people under a tent pre-pandemic. And it's hot, and obviously we all need something to eat. So I get deputized, as in ordered, to go across the street and get some breakfast sandwiches. And I cross the street, and there's 2 storefronts side by side. The one on the left has this eternal line spilling out the door and running down the street. The other has nobody. There's no line.
Okay.
I go into the one with no line. It's a Bodega, a convenience store in New York that also produces food.
Love it.
And the Bodega breakfast sandwich is one of the perfect things on earth. Generally is being made for you by a guy who's made 37,000 of them. Each of them fresh in front of you. And one of the things New York has is great baked goods. So the average Kaiser roll that you build this thing on is terrific. So
Mm-hmm.
I go in, I order my breakfast sandwiches, he makes them right in front of me, I leave, and the line is still spilling out of the other place, which is a Starbucks. And everybody
Of course it
in
is.
that line is waiting for microwaved garbage that's going to pass as breakfast along with a $9 coffee. And I was next door getting real food made by a real person in real time. I fear that there's going to be less and less of that in the United States. Certainly COVID helped run a lot of mom and pops out of business.
Yep.
And I think that's a shame. And it's, as much as chain restaurants annoy me for for being defrosters, I mourn the loss of the real places even more than I dislike the chains.
Absolutely.
But it's just dispiriting when you virtually every town in America you roll into now when you leave the interstate has this. You run this gauntlet. And the right word is gauntlet, not gauntlet, by the way.
Nice.
You run this gauntlet of fake restaurants.
That's it.
And I am troubled that has become the standard. Oh my God. Years ago, with Al Roker, we were doing a special on the food in Branson, Missouri, which is a stretch, but it's what was ordered up. And we were interviewing, who's the guy? Mickey Gilly.
Oh, Mickey Gilly. Yeah. From Gilly's.
A lovely guy, terrific guy. And I said, was it Mickey or no? It might have been somebody else. A guy who's the country piano player who is related to Jerry Lee Lewis. Damn, he's very famous. Anyway, so it's a famous country star. And we're interviewing him, and we say, well, how's food in town? He says, oh, it's great. We got a Ruby Tuesdays. We got an Applebee's. And he was being serious. And that's what it's come to. I mean, it's a shame. It's a damn shame.
Wow.
So was that negative enough for you?
I love it. It went kind of dark, dude. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of it. And you're going after the sandwiches. I'm going to go after the coffee. Everyone thinks Starbucks is this like free trade, tree hugging, happy. They're not. If you really want to support free trade coffee, reach out to people like Mocha Origins out of Honesdale. Again, Jeff Abella, great friend of the show. The work they're doing in the countries providing their coffee is amazing. So, don't think just because you're going to Starbucks, you're somehow supporting some social effort. It's a corporate monster. Same as...
Well, but there's something else with Starbucks. They did a brilliant marketing job. They buy cheap beans.
Yep.
To mask the flavor of cheap beans, they burn them. They convinced millions of Americans that that's what coffee should taste like.
It's not. They just burn them and that's really dark. Well, no shit, it's dark. It's burnt. It was Mickey Gilly, by the way.
Was it? Thank you.
Yeah. That's what happens. I don't have a real-time producer, so I have to play board op and all these different roles
Googling
at the
on the
same
side, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. No, so that was dark enough. So I gotta ask you. So all that aside, what's gonna be next? What's up next in the hole for you? I know you said you're working on another book that's more sandwich-centric. 5-year plan. What do you got going on?
I have fallen in love with writing. I have this next book planned. I also have been asked to collaborate on a cookbook project.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't have the chops to do the recipes, but my collaborator has the recipes, and I'm going to write the surrounding material and try to get more unknown information into the discussion of various dishes and ingredients.
Love that.
So I'm doing that. But no, look, I'm old. I've only got a few books left, but
Jesus.
right now I'm deeply into. I love this writing thing. I mean, you sit in an office all day on your increasingly widening posterior and call it a job.
I love that. And I mean, listen, as far as writers go, people, you want to plug in with David Page, Food Americana, on Amazon, on Facebook, on Insta. It's incredible. The writing is so natural and so I don't want to say simple to read, but for me, like, sometimes I just like a nice, easy, comfortable read. And for me, being a foodie by default, it's so easy for me to just tear through.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah,
thank you.
For sure. I do ask dibs on writing your foreword on your next book. Anybody?
How kind of you. I would love that. That's so nice. Thank you.
I'm only half kidding. No, I totally will. We'll talk more off air. Got to transition into the afters here, bud. Talk to me about this. I'm standing in your kitchen. You and I are cooking. Mm-hmm. What music do you have playing?
Warren Zevon.
Oh my God, are you serious right now?
I recently purchased a T-shirt with the name of the chow mein place from Werewolves of London.
Oh damn it! You're making me go to Google.
I was wearing it earlier today, so gonna get a big plate of big chow mein. When I was covering what they called the Troubles in Northern Ireland, I used to go jogging in the morning with my Walkman. That's how old I am.
Nice.
Playing, because I'm covering basically sectarian war involving what the authorities called terrorism, and I would go jogging past the Belfast University of Belfast. Maybe it was King's or Queen's University, whichever one was in Belfast, playing Warren Zevon's Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner.
Love it.
And that was, and remember, his best advice when Letterman asked him, as he was dying of lung cancer, Dave, enjoy every sandwich.
Enjoy every sandwich. Lee Ho Fook was the name of the restaurant.
That's right.
Lee Ho Fook. Enjoy every sandwich.
What I didn't know until I got the T-shirt and looked it up was the place was real.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he had just made it up to fit the song. The place was real.
It's at 1516 Gerrard Street. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
go figure.
Never made it there when I was living in town.
I don't know that it's there still. Well, maybe I'll take a look. Let's see. I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand walking by.
His hair was perfect.
Absolutely. No question.
Yeah.
No question. His hair was perfect.
You talk about chow mein, which is chop suey on hard noodles. Mm-hmm. In the book, I profile a place in Butte, Montana that claims to be the oldest family-owned Chinese restaurant in America, and their specialty remains chop suey.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah, the Pekin Noodle House in Butte, Montana.
Pekin Noodle House in Butte, Montana. If you're listening, Butte, Montana, we're here for you.
Hey, I got a lot of coverage in Butte. I was on the local TV station. I was in the local newspaper. I was in a magazine. Because I actually included 2 restaurants in Butte in the book. The other one is a steakhouse, Casa Grande Steakhouse, not Casa Grande, Casa Grande's Steakhouse, that decided to boost traffic by starting a sushi night, and it went over huge.
What?
Yes. Now,
wow.
It's Sushi Montana style. I mean,
sure.
There's one that's filled with steak and French fries and
Rocky Mountain oysters at all, or no?
Yeah, no, their big sushi night was a huge success.
Nice. That's awesome. Next after's question, you're going to be stranded on a deserted island, and you're only allowed to take 3 foods or food type items with you. Inexhaustible supply, but only 3.
Okay.
What would you take and why?
Well, is lox, bagels, and cream cheese 3 items, or is it 1?
I'll give you that as 1, because I like you.
Okay. That's 1. Central Texas barbecue is another. And I'm literally looking at what I have in the book. Lobster rolls, number 3.
Ooh, nice. Now, not the sushi roll, lobster roll.
No,
You're talking about Maine.
And it's got to be Maine style, not Connecticut.
Damn straight. Now, can you, for the lay people, explain the difference between the 2?
Yeah. Maine style lobster roll is the lobster is mixed up with a tiny bit of mayonnaise. The key is tiny. It's then put into a split top New England bun, which is heavily buttered on the outside and browned on the grill. The Connecticut style is simply that same lobster roll, that same bun, with lobster meat served warm, not cold, and topped with warm butter. And to me, those ingredients don't balance. If I want lobster and butter, I'm going to steam a lobster and dip in butter.
Would agree.
The key to the main roll is that little bit, and it's got to be just a little bit, and nothing crunchy.
Nope.
That little bit of mayonnaise, the right amount of lobster, which is a lot, but not one of these stupidly piled rolls.
Exactly.
And then the right amount of butter on the bun. The flavors and textures match perfectly.
Would agree.
With all due respect to Connecticut, I'm sorry, guys, but you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. I have to ask, Americana food-wise, have you ever made it up to Flo's in Maine?
No, I have not. I haven't been to Maine in years. And when I was a kid, I actually grew up in Western Massachusetts. We'd go up to, what was the lake? Either Boothbay Harbor or on some lake. And at Boothbay, we would just eat, as many lobsters as you can put in a human body until it falls over. I didn't eat lobster rolls in Maine.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah. But Flo's hot dogs, I gotta tell you, again, they used a lobster roll. They put the hot dog in it, and it's a steamed dog, mayonnaise, and a house-made relish.
That sounds weird.
It is stupid weird to look at. I took one bite, and this is very militant, the way you have to order. First of all, I'm 6'3". I had to put my head down when I walked in, because the ceiling clears about 6'1", I think. So I had to, kind of turn to the side. And you walked in, and you had to know what you wanted, and you got out. She would kick people out. She's 1,000 years old. And beautiful and powerful. She was, dead serious, and you ordered your stuff, and you got your stuff, and you went. The picture op was literally me moving. And I got a snap of it. I felt good. This snap of the casing, the mayonnaise and the relish you think would not play off each other. But it is one of the most amazing, unique culinary experiences of my life. Flo's Hot Dogs, $13.59 US $1 in Cape Nettic.
Okay, well, but understand something. I will now put myself out there as an example of how people should eat. It doesn't sound particularly tasty, but someone I respect says it is, so I'll try it.
Exactly. It's that simple, people. Don't hide behind what your parents made you hate. Go with it. Run with it. I assure you it will be rewarding. Now, I'm going to ask you the next one, and you might be the first guest in I don't know how many to say, yes, I know of her.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of My Last Supper by Melanie Denea?
I failed you.
Oh, my God. Damn it, David.
I failed you. My Last Supper?
That's all right. My Last Supper.
Hold on.
And the follow-up to that is The Next Course. So it's a coffee table book, 50 world-famous chefs each. Melanie Denea is a world-class photog. She's amazing. And that's the one where Tony's hanging the beef bone between his legs and he's naked, smoking a cigarette.
Lovely.
And everyone is asked the same questions. And they all center around the late-night drinking game of every chef, cook, dish runner in existence. Your ticket's getting punched tomorrow. You got one night to eat, drink, and be merry. What are you having? Who's there and why?
That's wonderful. I just pulled it up on Amazon. I'm going to buy it. See,
oh my God, you will not regret that.
I'm on your podcast promoting my book, and you're going to cost me $16.99.
I'm cutting into your profit.
Jeez. It's for the research for the book. I read all or part of 200 books.
Nice.
Which was, and I guess technically, I got paid for that.
That's right. There you go.
We'll see how much when the sales figures come.
That's right.
And remember, I'm already down with, if you're going to kill me, it's bagel, lox, and cream cheese. So.
Okay. Hey, I mean, if that's the answer, that's the answer. I mean, I'm not going to.
I have a thing going, with Barney Greengrass, which is one of the two great appetizing, I mean, there's more than two, but the two greatest appetizing stores in New York are Barney Greengrass on the Upper West Side and Russ and Daughters on the Lower East Side, which I actually even love more, but my daughter lives on the Upper West Side. So whenever I come into town to pick her up, as I did a few days ago, I call ahead to Barney's.
Nice.
Actually, Gary Greengrass now runs the place, and I put my order in, and it's just like an orgy of Jewish food.
Why is that not a T-shirt,
salad.
David? Why
What's
is that not a T-shirt? That needs to be a T-shirt.
It's an orgy of Jewish
Orgy
food.
of Jewish food.
At Russ and Daughters, they were wonderful. They let me behind the counter to try to slice lox.
Oh.
That is hard to do.
Really?
I ended up. You have this incredibly thin knife, and the way you have to slice at an angle is completely non-intuitive. And as a result, I mean, I basically made lox tartare, but it is hard to do.
Oh,
and,
wow.
you know, if you're a lox aficionado, then half of the appeal of a particular place is their ability to slice it thin.
Super thin, almost gossamer-like. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, so I came back from New York with my daughter, her boyfriend, 6 everything bagels, 6 bialys, half a pound of lox, half a pound of whitefish, some halava, and some rugelach.
Love it.
My doctor is going to shoot me.
Well, listen, if the lox and the halaga and everything else doesn't get you first, the bullet will. So.
Well, there you go. It's
there you
one
go.
or the other.
You're covered. And God, this kills me to actually say. I don't typically feel like sadness when I'm asking the last question, but I do actually feel sad here because I feel like we could hang out forever. Last question.
I feel like I made a great new friend tonight. So
holy shit! Without a doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Last question, the simplest and yet the most complex. David Page, what is food to you in a single word?
Satisfaction.
Love that. Tell me more.
Well, it's if you enjoy it and if you eat good food, then you become satisfied in so many ways. Not just hunger, but there's a non-sexual sensuality about it. It's being able or aware enough to take the time to savor something pleasant, and done right, it's usually shared with other people, so it becomes far more than a culinary experience, but it's satisfying.
I love that. I love that front to back. As I can say about this entire interview, your reputation, while it preceded you, did nothing but undersell you to just what an amazing presence you are in the culinary landscape. Kids, Food Americana, you need to get this book. You need to get this book. You need to read this book. You need to digest this book and realize where we're at, where we're from. And it's all courtesy of new best friend of the podcast, David Page. You can find you on, obviously, they look up Food Americana on Amazon. They're going to find you. But you have both a Facebook and an Instagram page for Food Americana as well?
That is absolutely correct. And Sean, thank you for all of those incredibly nice sentiments. If I can live up to just a little bit of it, I'll do my best.
Well, I'll be waiting on the payment, and if I don't receive it in 3 days, like I said, I'll take it out of the copy, and no one will hear.
Remember, the Venmo is always in the mail.
No one will hear a single word.
Yeah.
So, man, David, I truly and honestly thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Sean. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 165 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. With me again this evening, the illustrious, the unequated David Page, creator of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, as well as the author of Food Americana. Our producer, as always this evening, has been the lovely, voluptuous, I might add, Johnny Leland Robinson, a.k.a. the Reverend Johnny Lamoria. Be sure to check out the reboot of his Johnny Lamoria show next episode. I guess Nebula will make time for us, so we'll talk to him then. Take care. Are you passing through central Pennsylvania and looking for one of the best dining experiences and craft brew menus around? Look no further. Turkey Hill Brewing Company and 991 Central Road in Bloomsburg, PA has everything you could ask for and then some. Service, food, beer together. Unbelievable. Be sure to check them out. Call them today for reservations. 570-387-8422. Call today.